You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at SBT Songs, or check us out at chrisblair.com. What's up, everybody? Chris Blair here, and you're listening to another episode of Stories Behind the Songs. And this week, I've got my buddy Chris Ruediger on. It's a little different. Instead of talking about a couple songs and diving into them, Chris is a great songwriter, but we're talking about marketing on this episode. Chris started the 615 House back in 2020, and we're going to dive into why he started that and how that kind of built a community and collaboration with those early artists that were a part of that group with him. Artists like Priscilla Block, Bailey Zimmerman, Ashley Cook, Cooper Allen, Tiger Lily, so many more, and how by getting together, they figured out how to navigate media, marketing, digital platforms, what socials to use and when. We talk about things like quality versus quantity, how they figured out how to play the cycle of releasing music and when to do that, how to do that. It was so great. We dive into all of these things. And then also how through this process over the last few years, that's led Chris into now doing a lot of artist development, and how he has a whole new class of the 615 House artists coming in, almost like a 2.0 version. It's really cool. It was so much great advice on how to make the best songs get heard in this episode. So I hope you love it as much as I did. Let's get to it. Here's my buddy, Chris Ruediger. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We are here at the listening room in Nashville. Chris Ruediger in the house with us today. Dude, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, man. I have been following this podcast and obviously playing and booking shows with you guys for a while. To be on the couch here as we are rolling live on the podcast is great.
It's amazing.
So thanks for having me, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. There's so much that I can't wait to dive into. A little different this time because we're not going to dive into songs. We're going to go into a lot of the media that you have. You're great songwriter too, but like diving into like what you've built in town with things like 615 House and just what you've learned with artist development and all that. So we're going to get to that, but let's start with just how you got here in the first place.
Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy 7 years for me, but I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up listening to all styles of music. My dad's a big country fan, and there's a radio station up there, 102.5 and 101.7 The Bull, which were playing a lot of Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown Band. So that was kind of how I fell into love with country music. I moved down here in 2017 because I just had an itch to be a part of the creative process. I didn't really know what co-writing or how recordings got out on the internet or on the radio, but I was intrigued enough to come down here. So made the move in 2017, and I've been here for the past 7 years and watched Nashville continue to explode as a city, and also watch country music grow so much as a genre. So it's been a pretty wild ride, and I've loved being a part of it.
I want to talk about like when you first got to town, just kind of like what got you started and what you started doing first. But you've got a cool story about the first show that you ever came to here at the listening room.
Yeah, so I went to college here, and I remember the first week I was at school. I didn't know anything about co-writing in the Nashville scene, but I wanted to get closer to songwriting. So I said, all right, I'm going to go out to the listening room. I'd heard great things, but I'd never actually been to a show. And I remember coming here, and I think there were either three or four songwriters on stage in a typical round. But one guy in particular was really captivating, I think, my attention and the rest of the audience. And he starts singing, he's like, I got friends from Colorado. I got friends. And he starts singing, and he's like, my name's Michael Hardy. This is a song I wrote, with the FGL guys. And then he ends up playing Sign Sober You. And all of these songs were, the crowd was loving, but they hadn't been released yet. And it was kind of a weird moment, now 4 or 5, 6 years later, Hardy's obviously crushing it as an artist and continues to have so many mega hits. And it was really cool to hear those songs in their sort of raw form before they made it on the radio or streamed like they have. So that was the first time I came here, fell in love with it. And then I was like, man, it would be my goal. Like the Nashville goal for me would be to somehow get on the listening room stage, which fortunately enough we've been able to do. And now I've been able to have other friends and artists of mine come on stage as well. So we appreciate you guys for that. But what a crazy moment to see Hardy back then. You know,
it's so cool, man. Yeah, he was here not too long ago, a few months ago maybe.
Yeah,
and I was sitting up in the balcony with his mom. And we were just talking about like all the early days of like, it's cool to watch so many people who are friends and friends first, and then you see their success, and you've got to do some of that through 615 House too, that I can't wait to dive into. But I want to talk about like your musical journey as well, because when you first moved here, you weren't really sure like if you wanted to do the artist route or the writing. So you got here, you came to a show at the listening room, you started going to other shows around town. What was the progression for you after that?
Yeah, I think like many artists or songwriters that come to town, the first thing you kind of do is you want to shake hands and find your network and group of people. You know, I was coming from Boston. I didn't know really any songwriters or producers or artists in Nashville. So the first thing I did was kind of make those rounds, playing, you know, shows like here at the listening room, or I'm just up the road in Midtown, and I started writing some music. And that was also a discovery process for me as an artist, because I'm trying to figure out how I fit into the country scene, right? Again, I'm born and raised outside of Boston. My perspective might be different than some other country artists, but I still think like the root of this town is just writing songs about your story or stories of your friends. And so I started recording and putting out some music, a few songs that had some success, a few songs that did not have some success, and that's okay. But it was a great way for me to get, I think, like immersed into the space and also understand, you know, the cool concept, I guess, that I think is the through line of Nashville is in collaboration, right?
Yeah.
I think, you know, songwriting, recording, releasing music, every step of the way from the birth of a song until it's, you know, on the radio or streaming is through collaboration. And I felt like what I was doing was assembling the different pieces to collaborate with me to, you know, have my music succeed. But then that also has led to, you know, a lot of the work I'm doing now on the business side, which is helping other artists and songwriters also find their collaborators. And so that's, to me, the part of Nashville that I love the most. And I think regardless of whether I'm a songwriter or an artist or, you know, businessman, I'm going to, you know, stand by. So
yeah. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
So you move here 17, you're out, you're networking, and you're finding your place.
Mm-hmm.
You hadn't really been in town that long when things started going, and then all of a sudden everything shuts down with COVID. How was what was it like navigating through those challenges?
Yeah. So one of the songs that I put out, a song called Till It Wasn't, came out, I believe, in, it must have been right at the start of COVID.
Yeah.
And it charted on iTunes. I think it did like 100,000 streams in the first day, which for, you know, a nobody in town was a huge accomplishment for me.
Yeah.
I remember getting the paycheck for like $17.
Yeah,
but you know, it was the first time that I had like seen sort of some significant momentum for my artistry, and had some meetings with some publishers and labels, and you know, there was a little bit of talk, and then COVID hit, right? And that was, I think, really hard for myself and for a lot of artists that were like right at that same stage. We couldn't play live shows. You know, a lot of the labels or management companies in town were holding off on funding because there's such an unknown of where the industry is going to go.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, it was tough because I felt like that was right when I was building this momentum. And I think a lot of any artist careers built off these momentum rides, right? And for me, it was definitely tough. But, you know, I think in that moment, I just, you know, was like, man, I can't play shows on the road and I still want to figure out how to connect with people and push out my music. You know, the best thing for me to do is, you know, pick up the phone, you know, make a video, and whether it's Instagram or, you know, TikTok was on the rise at the time. And that's kind of how it all started. So it was definitely a weird journey, but I think COVID also is exactly why I'm here right now doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's good transition. Let's dive into that.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the idea for the 615 house, and also figure out like who your core like collaborators were going to be in the very beginning?
Yeah. So about April, May of 2020, I was online. First thought TikTok was a dancing platform. I'm not a dancer, and a lot of the artists I worked with are not dancers. So we were trying to figure out if there was a world for music to live on TikTok. And some of the first artists that I saw using the platform were artists like Cooper Allen and Alexandra Kay and Thomas Mack, who were all a part of the initial class of the 615 house. I have to give credit to Ashley Cook, who's a good friend of mine and successful artist in her own right.
Crushing it.
And she called me, and her and I had been chatting just about collaborating together on the platform and with some other friends. And we had seen that there were some other houses, like dance houses or content creation houses, but there wasn't a house solely dedicated to writing, recording, and marketing music. And I think that was when both like the light bulb kind of went off for her and I to create 615 house. You know, a lot of people ask that aren't from Nashville will say, well, is it 615 or 615 or what is it? 615 is the area code of Davidson County, right? So it was a cool spin for us to basically say this is the Nashville home. So that's how it started in August of 2020 was the first time we had posted anything online. It was 8 artists, and we just kind of chose friends that were also busy, you know, online, that seemed like they wanted to collaborate. I think that was like the beauty of the project was there wasn't really any ego.
Yeah.
Sure, the music industry is full of a lot of people with egos, and I think, as opportunities and things go on, that'll happen. But the beauty of it was like, we're all kind of at the same place in our career. We're all trying to figure out what the next move is. Let's just like link arms and help each other out. And so that's how it started, man.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. I mean, I know all of the guys that, were part of that core group. And then after that, and like, there are no egos. I mean, it's like, you mentioned some of them, but like Ashley and Bailey Zimmerman, Cooper Allen, Tiger Lily, Priscilla, who she worked for us as a server for years. And like, Sammy Arriaga, like just all these people that are just good people that love supporting. And I want to dive into that a little bit because I think we have something special in Nashville anyway. Like even if you're outside of one of those camps, right? Like most people are cheering on other people, like it's that kind of town.
Right.
And a lot of other businesses and industries and stuff, like I feel like there's not that as much, that there's more competitiveness. Mm-hmm. But if you go back, and you look at like Waylon, Johnny, Christofferson, like, they had their outlaw country group. And then you've got like Big and Rich, Cowboy Troy, 2 Foot, Gretchen, that had, the music mafia.
Right.
And like, I don't know if you've ever thought about it like that, but that's the way that I put 615 House. It's like, you had the outlaw country, then you had Big and Rich in the early 2000s. And then the next thing that came out was what you created.
I haven't necessarily thought about it with those examples, which is a cool lens to look at. I have thought about it a little bit through, I had done an internship at Make Wake Artists when I first moved to town, which was Luke Combs and Drew Parker and Ray Fulcher and Jonathan Singleton, right? And then to now see what Hardy and Wallen and Ernest are doing, I completely agree. I think it's pockets of people, and it's one of those things where the whole group rises with the success of an artist.
Yeah.
And the key for us was, and I'll tell this to anyone that's thinking about collaborating or whether working with us or other people in town. The beauty of collaboration is you're cross promoting each other's followings, right? So if you have 100 followers and I have 100 followers and we get together and we film something or write a song or whatever and we post it, that's now 200 people looking at us, right? Now you can do that with larger numbers, but there's no reason for me. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Not every 100 follower of mine is going to immediately jump on your train but maybe 10 or 20 cross over, right? And that was kind of the beauty that we were seeing. And by assembling this sort of group of Avengers, I guess, if you will, like that. That's really what people attach themselves to, was the whole family of artists, and then specifically individual, artistry started to shine, I think, as we continued to grow the channel and everyone grew their own artistry. So that's the beauty of it, man.
Yeah. What were some of your most memorable memories early on when all of that was going on and no one's out on the road? You guys are all just being able to get together at the house and film content and have a good time. Like what were some of the best times that you can remember?
Yeah. So what's funny is I do remember some of these. There were moments where we had a lot of fun. But I remember moments where like Priscilla got her first #1 song on iTunes. And I remember the first time one of our videos crossed 1 million views. And there were a lot of moments that can be linked to specific like data metrics.
Yeah.
But when I really kind of scroll back in my phone and look at these videos and photos, I actually, it's more just about the community and the events we threw. Like we threw one event here actually at the listening room. I think it was in the late fall of 2020 when like things were kind of coming back with live shows, and we had the whole group perform, and the show sold out like that. I think we did two shows actually, because
you and Sammy and I had that phone call.
Yes, you're right.
And it was like we were talking through like, okay, how are we going to navigate this and all that, and we were worried about the one because not everybody was ready to just get out and do stuff, and then it was like, oh, wow. Well, maybe we should do a second one. It was
man. I remember we were juggling, right? It's hard to have 9 or 8 artists on stage singing.
Yeah.
But we also didn't want to do 2 shows and not sell tickets. And I remember we kind of took the risk, and like, I'm pretty sure both shows sold out, which was, a great moment for us to have. And then, there were moments of like, Cooper and Alexandra and Thomas went on tour together. And I remember we all were kind of championing that and watching them sell out rooms. And then, Ashley, has now had her first #1 on country radio. But even when she was, going through the process of signing a record deal, like we were all championing her in that process. So, what was cool is like, you remember like the numbers, but like, sure, there are big videos and viral moments, but I think it was just like the core like memories are just the laughs and like the shows we played together. And there's some secrets that happen in the house that I'm not gonna tell but they're good stories. So anyway,
the B-roll
stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
there's in the vault.
It's funny, man. Like we are constantly filming. We have there are moments where like the camera's on and it's like, okay, we're recording, but there's also just moments of us hanging out together. And I've always wanted to, and we're working on some stuff, but putting that together in more of like a documentary or vlog style piece where people can just see like inside the house. Cause I think the moments of us like laughing and joking around are like as cool as, when we're singing a song.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I'm really excited for all the listeners. Cause there's a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are songwriters or aspiring artists who are kind of in that early stage, right?
Right.
Or some people that haven't even made the move to Nashville and they're considering it and they're just trying to listen to this and learn. I want to talk about how you've navigated marketing, media, and digital platforms, because you guys have done a great job. And you talked a little bit about the building this community that you can like feed off of each other's platform, but just dive into what you've kind of learned is the good and the bad of those things.
Yeah. So I'll be the first to say social media, right? I think for many people it's a love-hate relationship. The tough part about social media right now is that it's very saturated. It's overwhelming. Yeah. I think a lot of artists and songwriters feel this pressure to post their song or post a clip of them singing. They spend hours on it, and then you look back and it has 20 views, and you're like, I just wasted a day. This song's not going to go and do the numbers that I want it to do. And a lot of artists and songwriters I know are now equating poor viewership with a poor song, right? I don't know if that is the case. I would argue that good songs will win. I do think that the heart of this town and the genre is still rooted in finding, your songwriters and producers to make, records that'll span the test of time. But the one thing that I encourage any artist or songwriter to think about is you as an artist are a brand. And I think that people connect with brands not just because of one particular song, but because what they are standing for and what they represent. And I look at some of the biggest acts in country right now. Jelly Roll has a story, and it's a pretty damn good one.
Yeah.
And Meg Maroney, represents a lot of, I think, the, young to middle-aged women that, are going through, breakups and emotional times. And she has her brand in the emo cowgirl space, right? Just the same way that, there's the party space with somebody like, Gavin Adcock, who's on the rise right now. And I think, I guess my point to that is, I think solidifying a brand and what makes you unique and figuring out how can I put that online in a way that is authentic to me, but also in a way that is going to grab the attention of people. And that's just my biggest piece of advice toward anyone. And I think of moments that, and I'll use 615 House as an example. Alexandra Kay, has been doing this for years, and she really gained a lot of traction from her coffee videos. And there wasn't anything like calculated about it. It was just Alexandra loves coffee. She drinks coffee in the morning like many people do, and she happens to put on some music and sing. And one video, right, that sparked it all was her just making coffee and singing. And it's so natural and so true to just what she would do in any morning, but also showcases her talent.
Yeah.
And so that's just one of many examples I could give, but I think finding like what makes you and your brand unique is a place that I would start.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's important with any business or brand that you're building. And you're right. Like, you got to get outside of yourself and the song that you're pushing at that moment and look at like, what is the overall brand? When like, there's so many people in town that even people who understand and agree that that's what you have to do, but that love-hate relationship, they're more on the pendulum of hate side of it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the people I've talked to is because they're scared of it. They don't know. And you can scroll through TikTok or Instagram and you see these videos that look like it was $100,000 video production, in LA or something. And there's great apps and all of that kind of stuff to build that stuff if you go down that rabbit hole and you learn how to do it.
Right.
But I want to know like your take, like what about the people that don't understand how to do that and they're literally just doing a selfie with their phone or setting their phone on a tripod to video, and they don't know all the editing tools and all of that. Like, do those work? Mm-hmm. If they don't look professional? What's the consistency of how often do you need to do those? Certain hashtags that like, how do you keep up with the algorithms of what works and what doesn't? Like,
right.
all of that. So dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. I think first off, there's no right answer. And because if there was, then, I would have cracked the code and it would have worked for everyone. I will say, I do believe that good talent, good music, good singers are going to win. Like, if you have the talent, it's going to connect. It might take time. I think what you just explained and the frustration I think a lot of artists face is, okay, I get that I have to post. I feel like I have a brand, right? But I don't know how to film or record or edit and do this stuff. There's a couple of options to that. One is, if you're in a position to do so, find somebody that gets that and can do it. Sometimes it's not an $100,000 big budget video. It might just be finding a close friend that you hang out with that understands how you act, as a person and can find a way to captivate or grab that and edit it on camera. So that's one recommendation, is find somebody that you really trust that can deliver the type of edit that you would want. And I think the second part of it is, and I mentioned this, with the Alexander front, is I still think that we're in a world where sometimes raw video and just the natural, I guess naturally what you do day to day is almost as impactful as some crazy budget video. I've seen videos, I think Zach Bryan, or Dylan Gossett or Wyatt Flores, like those guys are building brands right now off of them just in their backyard filming videos and songs. And it's there's not a big production to it. It's just a natural feeling. And they have great songs and great music. And so I would argue that, I think finding somebody to help you edit and can think creatively is certainly a great step, right? That goes back to the collaborative nature of kind of what I talked about. But then I think also, like, don't put too much pressure on yourself to spend crazy amounts of money and have the best lighting and the best audio. Sometimes the natural stuff wins. And a lot of it too is going to be trial and error,
Sure.
And I think, like, that's the one thing I've tried to tell any artist or songwriter is there's so many platforms now that it gets overwhelming. I got to post to TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, and I got to post 3 times a day, and I got to post with these hashtags and these hours, like you're saying. It's like, well, embrace the fragmentation. And what I mean by that is you can deliver a piece of content to those channels, figure out what is reacting well, and then stick with that, right? And I know it might be tough, might be throwing a lot of stuff at the wall, but if you try a few things and then figure out, all right, this is really connecting with people, then run that formula. At least that's my opinion.
I love it. So quantity over quality. Is that what I'm hearing?
Man, I get asked that all the time. That's an interesting one. I will say quantity does matter right now. Some people will say, well, I don't want to aimlessly post. Okay. But my argument is, with the amount of videos and the amount of songs that are being uploaded every day right now, look, I'm an economics guy. I played baseball, like, do the batting average thing. If there are a million videos being posted in the exact space you're in and you only take one crack at it, it's not going to happen. Just the odds aren't there. But if you post 10 or 50 videos, I like the odds a little bit more, right? So I would say yes. If you're playing the statistics game, you have to post more. With that being said, where I say the quality game matters is actually look at what you're posting, look at what people are interacting with, and if certain videos are outperforming other videos, figure out the why, right? Is it because I had a certain backdrop or a transition that was the right, way to captivate people? Or was it just the song and that's the song that I need to go with? Or was it maybe a video where it was more collaborative and I had friends in the video? It wasn't just me. And so, yes, I believe it is quantity, but then I also believe it's figuring out and analyzing why certain videos are working, whether on your channel or people that you look up to, and like really dig in and figure out the why.
This episode is brought to you by All Clear Audio. All Clear Audio is a custom and universal in-ear monitor company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a storefront right here in Nashville, Tennessee, where we film the Stories Behind the Songs podcast. All Clear strives to not only be the leading provider of high-quality, custom, and universal fit in-ear monitors, but also leads the way in customer service and care. With customs starting at dual driver all the way to 13 drivers, there's something for everyone. Head over to allclair.com, that's ALCLAIR.com, and use our code SBTSongs to receive 10% off. Thank you for the sponsorship. We love you guys at All Clear, and we hope that everyone out there listening takes advantage of this and enjoys them as well. You talked about TikTok a little bit. I want to go back to that. What's like, when you look at all the socials out there, like, and I would say, probably the two big ones is Instagram and TikTok, right?
Yeah.
But then you've got like, Snapchat, like all these other things out there. Like how do you feel about like across all, like Facebook even? Like I think there's different demographics that you're going to find in each one of those.
Yeah.
How do you in the 615 house or with artists that you're working with, how do you figure out which one to really focus on with maybe ad dollars, no ad dollars?
Yeah.
Or is it just like, hey, we need to use them all?
Right. First answer is we use them all. You have to embrace the fragmentation. We've seen videos that have connected with an audience on TikTok more than Facebook and vice versa.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things to do is I have some people that look through the data for us, and we'll see videos that surface on YouTube and have 5 times more viewership than TikTok. And like, then you go to the why question. It's like, well, maybe the fan bases are slightly different on those platforms. And so being able to embrace that is going to benefit any artist. The second component of it is right now, I think a lot of people and a lot of artists are chasing viewership. They're chasing follower counts, and they're worried about how I get from 1 million followers to 1,000,001 followers, right? Take a step back and think about the fact that you have 1 million followers, or maybe you have 100 followers. That's fine. How can I win over every one of those 100 followers to come back and want to see and interact with my next video, or want to go to a show, or want to buy merchandise, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so numbers driven and an economics guy, but I love to use this example of like the funnel effect right now, which is if I had 1 million followers on TikTok and I posted a song and it got 500,000 views, and then I got 200,000 people to stream that song, right? I look back after 3 months, I'm probably getting a check in the mail for, I don't know, $800 to $1,000. But what if I thought about, I have 1 million followers on TikTok. How do I get 10,000 people out of those 1 million to care about my music and who I am so much that they would contribute $1 to my business every month? Your actual net gain is so much higher. You make $10,000 a month versus the $800 or $1,000. And that balance, right, I think is what we're all struggling with as an artist and a songwriter, for those that are promoting their music. But I think winning over true fans is so important.
Yeah.
And it will also lead to sustainability, of your business financially.
Yeah, man, so good. This is such great content. And I think I love diving into the songs of what we typically do. But this whole podcast was built on the stories behind the songs in every capacity, right? Whether it's publishing, management, touring, all of that. And this is just such an important piece with how easy it is to get it out with DSPs and all of that today. So switching into the DSPs, let's talk about the release cycle. There's so many things that, with playing the algorithm and, it's so many people that when you're looking at the labels, they're not even going to look at signing an artist now unless you've got X amount of followers on Spotify and X amount of followers on TikTok and, things like that. So is it every 4 weeks? And again, that quantity over quality kind of thing. I've heard agents talk about, hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a $5,000 studio version of a song.
Right.
It can be a good version of a demo that you do on Pro Tools or Logic or something in your house. Just get the stuff out there. So how do you look at that release cycle and deal with that?
Yeah, I think we're in such a data-driven industry, right? So it's a lot of companies, because they are investing money and they have to make money, and I get it, look at the data. They look at the streams. They look at what somebody's doing. And they say, okay, well, I'm going to make a calculated bet because there's already a proven track record. So I think, the gut before data situation is so important. And I think if you're an artist and songwriter, you got to believe in the songs, and anything that you post online has a chance of going viral, right? So when you post something online, you better be sure that you like that song, because there's a chance that your career is built off that song. With that being said, I said the quantity, game is so important. I think you got to take shots and at bats. And I think we're in a time now where people are consuming music more rapidly. I think a lot of people don't want to wait. The thing that I hate the most is I'm like, oh my God, Chris, you got to see this video. Look at this song. It's amazing. Yeah, it comes out in March of next year, right? We don't want to wait 2-3 months to pre-save and do the whole cycle of waiting for a song. You've already lost the interest of the consumer that saw it 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
So I do think that we're moving into a world now where the process of writing, recording, and releasing a song just needs to be a little bit quicker, because people are consuming music faster. And so I would encourage artists and teams and songwriters to think about increasing a cadence and a frequency that makes sense for the output of the artist. I don't think it needs to be a song every day or a song a week, but I definitely think, you talk about the 4 to 6 week cycle. I think we're right in that spot. I think it should be a song every month. And also, if you have a lot of music that you're teasing and there is a demand for it, don't be afraid to put out multiple tracks. So
at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've seen some artists that have posted a couple songs that have gotten interest from people, and then they only drop one, and then the other 2 songs are left in the dust. And people want to hear that music too. If there's a demand for it, right? You should put it out.
Yeah, that brings up a good point too. Like, if you are just doing one, let's say every 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got it on TuneCore or whatever you're using to put music out. Like, you've got it scheduled where your next one's coming out. Let's say January 1st, and you're putting something out, and 3 weeks goes by, and all of a sudden you've got a social post that takes off.
Right.
And how do you manage like writing that and not losing the momentum on a song that just started to take off by diluting it with like, oh, hey, that's cool, but guess what? I got a new one coming out. Do you delay that release on January 1st, or do you somehow try to ride both of those?
Right. I think that's a case by case scenario,
sure.
and I that's a crappy answer to give, but I think it depends. If you're having a song that is having a moment and people, and you can look at, stream counts, or you could look at, just the momentum behind it. Maybe you ride it out for a little bit. If another song that you start to tease also has interest and there's an appetite for it, then I would say also put that out. I think it just goes back to the demand game, and figuring out, how you can build the best momentum. If it's one song or multiple songs, and then that leads into an album cycle, right? I mean, that's the fun sort of creative marketing process that I love to do. And I think if you're an artist and trying to figure that out, I think talking about that with other people that are maybe in similar situations, again, that's the collaborative nature I talk about. And I should have brought this up earlier, and I forgot. One of my favorite parts about the 615 House, and looking back at the memories we had, was it wasn't just about the data. It was about these conversations, right? We were in a room of 8 artists, and somebody said, hey guys, I'm having a moment where my song has 1 million streams, but I have another song that I really like. Should I put it out? Well, the beautiful part was you had 7 friends that were also going through the same process that could comment on it, right? And so I think like those conversations, and that's where I say find your network, find the people you really trust, because they might be able to help you with these discussions.
Yeah, man, that's so good. I want to get into what you're doing now with artist development a little bit, but one more question on this that I've seen some artists, like I think like Julia Cole does this quite a bit, and Ashley even did this early on, and is, they'll put out a studio version of it, like full production song of a single, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, they'll put out that same song as a broken down acoustic. Mm-hmm. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, it's, hey, this video is out.
Right.
And it's almost like this, like every 2 weeks, but it's like a month and a half of the same song, just 3 releases in that. So do you do a lot of that, or do you focus on just like, hey, maybe we'll do that, or a case by case basis kind of thing? But it's like,
I think it's a great strategy. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Julia and Ashley and the way they release music and artists like them, because what they're doing, I think, is they're keeping our attention span longer.
Yeah.
Right? When a song comes out, and I love Julia, and Julia has a song comes out, I'm going to listen to it, probably add it to my library. I'll probably really stream it heavy for about a week, and then it'll be kind of in my shuffle, right? And it'll come up periodically. Maybe if I really like the song, it's a little bit more frequent, but I focus my attention to other music. I'm sorry, Julia, if you're listening to it, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
But when you post another, release of the acoustic version, well, then maybe I go back and I stream the original again, or I see the video and it reminds me of how good that song was, and I listen to it. And so I think what they're doing is they're trying to drag out, right, the attention span for like a month or 6 weeks to really make an impact of that song, opposed to just 1 week. I think it's a great strategy. And I think particularly, again, if there's demand for an alternate version or a collaborative version, or a video release, then I would say go for it.
Sweet. Chris, you obviously have done a lot of research and thrown yourself into this world and know a lot about it. Is that how you kind of shifted and started working with artist development?
Yeah. I think the last few years I've been able to surround myself with a lot of people that have expedited their careers. And with the rise of any artist's careers, there are so many things that come into play. There's interest from management and record labels and publishing and touring, right? And you have to balance your schedule because you're now doing a million things a day. There's also sort of the mental process that comes with, gaining exposure, being in the spotlight, always being recorded. I think that takes a toll on a lot of artists. And then there's also deal structure, right? And business management. And a lot of artists take opportunities sometimes prematurely because they are looking for either exposure or financial payouts or whatever it might be, but they forget about how that impacts their career for the next 5 or 10 years. And one of the things, or I should say a couple of the things that I have heard consistently from artists that have had these opportunities is that artists value creative freedom. They value flexibility, like with their releases. And they also value control of their recordings and the release cycle and master ownership. And we're in a really interesting time where I think there are a lot of things that you can do independently as an artist to champion yourself and further your business that maybe you didn't have, 10, 20 years ago. And social media is the reason for it. Let me be clear and say, I think major labels are great for a lot of artists. And I think that when the time is right and the right deal is presented, it's a very healthy relationship. But I also think there's a really great opportunity right now for artists to further their careers independently. One artist that I have to shout out because he's a friend of mine is Drew Baldridge, and watching the rise of his song on country radio independently was such a cool experience for myself. I think a lot of people to watch. And so that's really what I'm trying to provide. I'm trying to provide some resources and some education and some passion behind artists that, I think were in either my spot or in the spot of a lot of the other artists in 615 House, just a couple years ago, because there's always new artists coming to Nashville. And if we can provide a place and a home for you to benefit from, then let's do it.
I love it. Yeah. What's your favorite part about development?
Dude, there's so many great parts of it.
Nope, you gotta pick one.
I gotta pick one. Man. I think my favorite part about development is watching. I think it's just watching somebody's vision and it's watching somebody's vision and goal come to life. That sounds so cliche and cheesy, but what I mean by that is I will talk to artists and they'll have specific goals that they want to accomplish. Sometimes it's 1, 3, 5 year goals. And then every now and then they'll say, oh, and there's this goal that like they don't really fully believe that they can accomplish. But then it happens or they get one step closer to it. And that's the part of it that I love, like watching these artists that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago said, man, I would love to play the Grand Ole Opry, or I'd love to have a #1 song on country radio. And it seems so outlandish, but like, you guys did it, and that's really cool. And I hope I can keep doing that for other artists.
Yeah, that's great, man. Mm-hmm. I know it's hard to break it down to one, so thanks for playing along with me.
I cheated a little bit. It's good enough.
So I want to. I think it's it's pretty cool. Like we talked about, like 615 was built in 2020, and it just kind of blew up, and there's been deals that have come out of that and artists that have gone on the road, and then new people come in to kind of fill that spot. But lately, and really like in the last like 30 days even, I've seen all these posts about like the new 615 House, like 2.0. So talk about that.
Yeah. So maybe it was just me getting very nostalgic and in my feels one night, but I remember looking back at a bunch of videos and realizing, the first class that we had, they're so busy, they're doing their own thing, but they still have a lot of respect for what we built, and it's kind of time to turn the page to the next class, right? And I think there's artists out there that are exactly where the first class was 3 years ago, and so I've spent the last couple months with my team sort of vetting some people online and going through. Everyone asks like, what's the audition process? Well, the audition process is kind of like we find talent, we see if they're a good fit. We often will invite them out to a content shoot, and if they seem like they're hardworking and collaborative and have talent, then we'll try to find a way to bring them in. And so we do have a new class that is forming of artists that we're so pumped about. This just happened naturally, but it's sort of all the different sectors of country music. Like we have 90s country, we have like rap country, we have pop country, we have singer-songwriter country. Like it happened naturally. And that's what I love and I get super excited about. So
yeah,
it's back 2.0.
Yeah, we got to talk about doing a double header here. I know, and bring the new class in, and
we got 8 new artists. Yeah. So I think we go 2 bills of 4, and we got a 6 o'clock and an 8:30.
We need to look at dates and figure this out, because if we can do this soon, like January, February, maybe. Like you also have that first class that they're not going to be back out on the road, so like just maybe tease in a couple of those.
Chris, you're sharing too much, man.
I know, but hey,
I would love it, dude. That would be pretty badass. Class 1 and class 2, the official. We gotta like when you're running a race and you have like a baton, like we gotta hand over the baton.
Dude,
like,
now you're
stage,
talking. Now you're saying too much.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah. Okay, man. Last little bit of advice. What would you share with aspiring artists? /songwriters that you haven't already talked about?
Couple things that I would share for anyone. One is trust your gut. Your artistry best. You're the CEO of your business, right? You're the CEO of your artistry. So what I mean by that is what is real and authentic and what you like. Don't be afraid to share that. If you don't like a certain line or a melody in the room, speak up, right? If you don't like a song but somebody's telling you have to put it out, doesn't matter. You control your business. I think that's really, really important for artists to hear. Second piece of that is I can't emphasize enough how important it is to network and collaborate and meet people, because they might be the people that are with you for the next 20 years in your camp, right? We talk about community here, and we talk about the beauty of collaboration. And the best way to do it is to get yourself out there and form those relationships. So those are my 2 pieces of advice. It's not 1, but it's 2.
I love it. All right. So always end with this one, and you listen to it so you know what's coming. But that's advice for everybody listening. Now, if you can go back to 8-year-old you, everything that you've built after moving to Nashville in 7 years and all of that, what advice do you give yourself today if you're talking to 8-year-old you?
Man, I love that question. My one advice that I would give myself is enjoy the ride and enjoy the process, because I think right now more than ever, I get so ingrained in the numbers, in these moments, in these little things that just don't matter. And you got to have fun with it. I got to remember I'm in an industry because I love music. It's one of my greatest, if not my greatest passion in the world. And I have to just embrace the journey, because there's no point in getting frustrated or beating yourself up over just some little data metric. It's about people and experiences and doing what you love.
Man, thank you so much for spending some time.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. Like the crew here, the team, it's awesome. It's great.
It's this has been just such a cool episode. And I hope everybody out there listening enjoys it as much as I did, because it's a part of this that is so integral in success that people either just don't understand or they're afraid to dive into it.
Right.
And you've said a couple times, and you say this all the time, but like the great songs get heard. And I think that's so important, and they do. And the work has to be put in to make sure that they do. And everything that you're doing is working, man. So keep it up.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me kind of nerd out and talk about a few things and share my story. But we appreciate you. I speak for all artists and songwriters. Love the Listening Room Cafe, all that you guys do. It's a staple of this community. And I'm glad that I just get to be a little bit of a part of it. So thanks, man.
Thank you, brother. Everybody out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow us, all of those things. And you've been listening to Chris Ruediger, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. Make sure to give us a follow on Spotify if you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you click that notification button so you can keep notified when new episodes come out. We release brand new episodes every Tuesday, and you can find us on YouTube at Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to send us a comment letting us know what you thought of the episodes. We love getting your feedback, and share this with your friends. The more we grow, the more that we can keep doing this. It's our mission to bring you all of these great stories behind the songs from some of Nashville's most iconic artists and songwriters, publishers, producers, everyone in between, and a lot of my great friends. We love what we do, and we love sharing their stories with you. We appreciate all of the continued support. Thanks also to all of our sponsors, and we will see you all next week.